Let's talk about why shifting from punishment to discipline can create deeper connections and long-term growth for kids. It's often confused that punishment and discipline are the same thing. They are not. Punishment is one form of discipline, but not all discipline is punishment. And I will argue to the ends of the earth that most discipline, a huge majority of discipline, should have nothing to do with punishments. Discipline is about teaching and guiding, not controlling or just punishing. It's kind of like every square is a rectangle, but not all rectangles are squares. Every punishment is discipline, but not all discipline needs to be punishment, and most discipline should not be punishment. Let me break it down for you. Punishment often feels like payback for disruptive behavior. I oftentimes have parents and teachers and other caregivers who will call me and say, I had to take their phone away. I had to take their tablet away. I had to take their video game system away, whatever it might be, because they were disrespectful. And I, through the course of those conversations, have to talk with them and say, well, it sounds like they made you frustrated and then you just wanted to make them feel frustrated. I don't understand why the phone, tablet, or video game system has anything to do with their behavior, anything to do with what they did. Punishment often turns into this back and forth of, you did this thing, so now I'm going to do this thing to you. And then oftentimes, if you use punishment a lot, then the child says, fine, then I'm going to do this thing to you. And then you have to come up with something bigger. And it's, oh, well, then I'm going to do this thing to you. And it turns into this cycle of, you did this thing, so I'm going to do this thing. And you did this thing, so I'm going to do this thing, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it doesn't teach the child anything. It doesn't teach them what to do instead. And many times they even lose sight of what they did in the first place that caused the first punishment. Consequences, on the other hand, should be natural or logical. Punishments oftentimes are not natural things that happen, and punishments oftentimes are not logical. Let me break down those two types of consequences. There are natural consequences and there are logical consequences. Very generically, an example of a natural consequence would be something like if a child forgets their lunch, they feel hungry. Or it's winter right now, it's January of 2025, day 1. If your child chooses to not wear their coat, they may get cold. That is a form of a natural consequence. It just happens. It's the result of what they did. Nobody had to add anything onto it. Nobody did it to them. It's just you chose to do this behavior, or you forgot this thing, or whatever it might be. Here's the result of that. That's a natural consequence. Then there are these other things that are called logical consequences. These are oftentimes the things that are thought of as punishments, but I'm going to make what I believe is an important distinction between a logical consequence and most of the punishments that I see. A logical consequence is connected to the behavior that the child exhibits. An example, if they were to misuse a tablet or misuse their phone or misuse their computer, it's taken away from them because they weren't able to stay safe on that thing. Maybe they were looking at something they shouldn't have been looking at, or talking to someone that they shouldn't have been talking to. Because they weren't able to keep themselves safe, it is removed from them because you have to ensure they stay safe. But those logical consequences, whatever the consequence is, needs to be tied to the behavior, and it also needs to be in the same measure of the behavior. So if they've misused their tablet or their phone or their computer one time for a brief period of time, you don't take it away for a week or a month or even longer, I've seen. It is, hey, for the rest of today, no more phone, tablet, or computer, whatever it might be, because you haven't been able to stay safe on that thing today, and so I have to take it away. One of the best examples of a logical consequence I ever saw, and I praised this mother so much when she told me about this, was her child was showing physically aggressive behaviors at school. And every day when he would come home from school, he wanted to hang out with his friends in the neighborhood. She decided that a logical consequence would be that if he was physically aggressive with other people at school, he could not hang out with people once he got home because he hadn't shown he could keep himself and others safe that day. That is brilliant. It is, he did this today. Here's the consequence for today. He was unsafe with people, so he can't hang out with people. Do you see? It's almost a one-to-one direct correlation. That is a logical consequence. The real thing to think about is those natural consequences just happen. A logical consequence should be so logical that it is as if the child did it to themselves. It should be so logical that it feels natural. That one-to-one where that child was physically aggressive with people at school so he couldn't hang out with friends at home, that day makes so much sense. It feels so natural. Those consequences help the child learn and grow. It's not something that you use to make them angry because you are angry. It's not to be used as a payback. It's not a, they were disrespectful to me, so now I'm going to take away the thing that they love most. It is all about helping children learn to make more positive decisions. And here's the thing, if a natural consequence has taken place, if they are cold because they decided to not wear a coat, that can be it. You don't have to add on another consequence. You don't have to add on a punishment. That's where it would be a punishment, not a logical consequence, because a natural consequence has already taken place. They're already cold. So you can look at them and you could say, well, I guess next time you're going to want to wear your coat. That's it. You don't have to say, and now you're grounded because you chose to not wear your coat. No, let them be cold, and then next time, hopefully, they'll remember feeling cold, and they will choose to take their coat. It doesn't have to turn into this, you did this to me, so now I did this to you. You didn't listen to me, so now I'm going to do this to you. No, natural consequences do a lot of work for us where we don't have to add anything on. And then, if those natural consequences, if there's obviously not a natural consequence, or if that natural consequence has taken place several times and it's not teaching the lesson you want it to teach, that's when it's time to add on a logical consequence where it is directly related to the behavior and it's in the same measure that they showed that behavior. That's what helps children learn and grow. That's what helps them learn how to make more positive decisions rather than just seeing it as, let's see who can outdo each other with trying to make the other one more frustrated. And a big part of discipline that punishment has very little to do with, a huge thing in discipline, is talking with your child. I am constantly baffled at how many people do not have conversations with their children, or the only conversations they have with their children are telling them what to do and what not to do, rather than discussing things with their children and helping their child to learn why some of those things are the best choices to make, or why some of those things are important to stay away from until a certain time, or whatever it may be. Talk with your child. And if you can discuss things with them rather than doling out punishment, then you are working through problems with them. This is something I have to praise my parents for. They did a fantastic job. If we did something disruptive, they would just talk to us. And my friends, I would show up to school the next day and they'd say, oh, so how long are you grounded for? And I'm like, I'm not grounded. They'd be like, oh, well, what'd they take away from you? They didn't take anything away from me. What do you mean? Oh, what do you mean you're not grounded? They didn't take anything away from you? Well, we talked about why it was wrong, and I apologized, and I'm not going to do it anymore. That was it. That's all it took. It didn't have to turn into this huge thing. It was just a discussion. And in those discussions, in those talks with your child, make sure that your expectations are clear with them. Sometimes children are yelled at or told they're in trouble over something that they had no idea was the expectation. Make sure if it's an expectation you have not set, or is not just completely socially understood as the expectation, that you set those expectations in discussions with your children and discuss why those expectations are important. Why is the expectation the expectation? Really, it comes down to this. The more you punish your child, the more you'll have to punish your child. Because punishment doesn't teach what to do instead. And it doesn't teach the child how to control themselves. It just stops the behavior temporarily and tells the child it is going to be your job, not their job, your job to control them and to stop them from making any poor choices. Natural consequences can teach lessons. Logical consequences, when absolutely necessary, can teach lessons. And that's what discipline is all about. Just resorting to punishments and constantly going to punishments that have absolutely nothing to do with the behavior that the child showed does not teach them what to do instead. It does not make sense in their brain except to say, I made them angry, so now they're going to try to make me angry. It's my turn next. That's what punishments do. Discipline is about teaching and guiding, not controlling or punishing. Do your best to teach and guide. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share a comment about how you plan to discipline more and punish less this coming year.